Alright guys, today I wanted to put out my review of Destiny 2 Renegades. I've waited to put this out mainly because I wanted to wait and see how this expansion would be after the recency bias had faded and after the dungeon was out for at least a few days and I got a good feel for it. Now if you clicked on this video, then you obviously read the title. Did Destiny 2 Renegades do enough to fix the game? Honestly, no, it didn't. But is Destiny 2 Renegades a good experience? Yes, it is. The way I want to structure this review is I want to go over the campaign, the narrative, followed by the new activities, that being the new dungeon and Lawless Frontiers, and then finally, any miscellaneous things about Renegades. So let's start with the campaign. Was it good? Yes and no. The campaign had really good highlights. The first mission was very cool and really set the tone of the expansion. I liked that the exotic mission for the lightsaber was interwoven into the story, and the exotic mission itself was very well done and was a very enjoyable experience going in blind. And the final mission where you fight Loom and then ride around on your speeder was just a really fun experience. But the campaign wasn't without its flaws. The first one being the repetitiveness of the missions themselves. Anyone who has played the campaign likely knows what I'm referring to, but if you don't, a large majority of the campaign has you doing versions of Lawless Frontiers over and over and over and over again. It was so bad that this was the first time I didn't complete the campaign in the first day or two, and it took me almost 4 days to fully beat the campaign. Mainly because I was still burnt out by everything Edge of Fate did, and having to do the same thing over and over again got very old very quickly. It was to the point where I would log on, and if the mission was a version of Lawless Frontiers again, I would play it and then log right back off for the rest of the day. And another thing that you could look at as being either positive or negative, this is just a typical Destiny campaign. You complete one mission, fly over to talk to this character, then go talk to that character, then go do this mission where people are talking over the intercom, pushing the narrative forward while you just sit there and kill things. It's the same old thing. So if you've liked Destiny campaigns in the past, that probably won't annoy you, but that is something that is getting old to me. And this leads me to my next point, and that being that the legendary campaign was just a complete joke. I had to keep checking to make sure I was doing the legendary version of the campaign to get the exotic at the end, because enemies looked like normal enemies with gray bars. Nothing really did a lot of damage to you as the player, and you were able to mow just through everything, which was a very stark contrast compared to the previous expansions like Final Shape and Witch Queen, for example. But now let's go over the narrative, which will contain spoilers, so if you haven't played the campaign yet, here's your warning, and I'll put a timestamp where you can skip to the end of me talking about this if you want to avoid any of these spoilers. But overall, the narrative I thought was solid. The story has you join Drifter, his ghosts, Blue, Eris, Ido, and a new character called Honor, who's pretty much just a Jedi, and together you face off against the new Cabal faction, the Barrett Imperium, led by Dredgen Bale, aka Kylo Ren, and Loom, the big Cabal bad guy. This new enemy starts popping up all over the solar system, and Drifter is convinced the Nine have something to do with it because of a dream he had shown to him by who he believes was a member of the Nine themselves. So you start hunting down this enemy without the help from the Vanguard, as Zavala and Ikora didn't think this threat was anything too major, and they wanted to keep their efforts on the last city. So it turns into just this little group taking on this new threat, and as you progress through the story, you learn more about who Dredgen Bale is, what his motives are, and how the Nine play into this. Dredgen Bale is a lightless character with a dark past that Six, a member of the Nine, uses to try and get rid of Guardians. Because Dredgen has a hatred for the Vanguard and Guardians, he willingly aligns himself into a partnership with Six to make this happen, and with the help of Six, they develop a weapon called Eclipse, which has the ability to kill anything that is tethered to the light, and that being Guardians and Ghosts, while leaving anyone who isn't a Guardian or a Ghost without a scratch. So knowing this, we fight off his forces to get to the super weapon to destroy it before he has a chance to use it on the last city. I do like that this story is much more of a linear and straightforward story and less convoluted with Destiny lore jargon, but I do have some problems with it, that being the development of the two main villains, Dredgen Bale and Loom. You hardly learn anything about Loom all the way up until you fight him. I don't even know if he has 10 lines of dialogue by the time you get to the final mission. And Dredgen Bale is such an intriguing character, but unfortunately, his dark past that the campaign hints at doesn't actually tell you anything about it at all, if you want to learn about his past and why he is the way he is, you have to go over and read the lore books or go watch Bife and Mylan. This has been a thing that Destiny has always done that I've always hated, and that's them not showing it and just putting everything in long text boxes or hiding everything in lore books that 90% of Destiny players don't read. And this is also a large reason why I've stopped caring about the Destiny lore, because a good game with a good story is able to inform the player everything while they're playing the campaign. Destiny, on the other hand, would be considered terrible on every front if not for Bife or Mylan, which a good game should never depend on content creators to explain their own game. But alright, let's go over the new activities, the new dungeon Equilibrium and Lawless Frontiers. Let's start with the dungeon. It's good. Is it the best dungeon they've ever made? No. But is it a better dungeon than most of the other ones? Yes. Yes, it is. I really enjoyed the aesthetic of this dungeon and the Star Wars themes throughout. The mechanics are very simple, which isn't always a bad thing, although in this case they were very, very simple. And the weapons are all very good. I also really like that after you complete the main dungeon's quest, you're able to attune to any of the weapons and or armor to make farming more efficient and get those god rolls quicker. And I like, in addition to try to get the new dungeon exotic, you also have a chance of getting the new Taken crystal for your lightsaber. The chance to earn cosmetics through the game itself on top of good loot really adds to a lot of replayability of this dungeon, and that's something that you always want to see when it comes to dungeons and raids, is how replayable are them. I think that's really what sets the bar and makes a dungeon a good dungeon or a raid a good raid. And also I like the feat system, and I like how it works to get higher tiers of the weapons and armor. I've always stated that I think higher tier loot should be locked behind more challenging activities, and while this dungeon doesn't completely lock tier 4s and 5s behind feats, it is implementing a system that makes them way more accessible by doing the feats. One critique I do have, however, is that the dungeon itself is very short. I know Bungie has this formula of 3 encounters per dungeon, but running this dungeon, especially on non-contest mode in a 3-stack, can be done just insanely quickly. But overall, the dungeon is very enjoyable, and I'm having a lot of fun playing through it, getting my weekly runs in. It's been a blast, and I'm really happy with how the dungeon turned out. But now let's go over Lawless Frontiers. I think Lawless Frontiers is a fine activity, but it can get very repetitive. I like the idea of it being a pseudo extraction type of activity where you obtain loot boxes that can only give you loot after completing the activity and exfilling, and wiping will get rid of everything you had earned in that run. Invaders do add some variety to the gameplay, and invading yourself is a very unique concept and does add a lot of replayability, but like I said, I do think this activity is a little repetitive, and I'd be willing to bet the community will get tired of it over the next few weeks. Overall though, it is a good activity, far better than most of the activities Bungie's made for expansions in the past, and I hope they continue to update it to avoid the mode getting stale. Alright, now this is the part of the video where I just want to kind of talk about the miscellaneous things Renegades brought. Let's start with the good changes. First and foremost, the new vault overhaul is fantastic. We now have a sorting filter to find our items quicker. We can skip to any page instantly rather than having to push the next arrow button over and over and over again. And we got an increase in total vault space to 1,000, up from 700. Next, the new heat weapons are very interesting and also very good. When Edge of Fate came out, the only new weapon I used was Mint Retrograde, as I just didn't like any of the other ones. But with Renegades, most of the weapons are so good that I want to farm for them, and I actually want to replace my other weapons with these new weapons. Now, could that be just because they sound and look like Star Wars guns? Potentially, but it's also because they're unique and the new heat mechanic for the weapons is really cool. Also, the new exotic ornament system is awesome. If you didn't know, you can now use any obtained exotic ornament for any exotic that is in the same armor class. This means no more ugly Dawn Chorus, no more ugly Worm God Caress, no more however the fuck you pronounce this. Fashion is about to go way up, and I'm here for it. Now all they need to do is just make it so the exotic class items can use any ornament, exotic or legendary, and we'll be eating good. Next thing I'm liking, but this is with an asterisk, is the new order system. This is basically just bounties, but without having to go to vendors to obtain them. And the reason I say I like this, but with an asterisk, is because with the addition of this new system, they took out the weekly challenges. The weekly challenges were a way to get a lot of XP and bright dust in quick bursts. The reason I don't like them taking this out is because if you want to max out the battle pass, you kind of have to be constantly playing, or at least consistently playing, and you can't really take a break come back and knock those weekly challenges out to max out the battle pass anymore, or get the big bright dust pile at the end by completing them all. I don't know why we had to get rid of those and why we couldn't just have both orders and weekly challenges in tandem, but I guess it was too much XP or whatever. I don't know. I also don't like that once again we got a new expansion with no new PvP maps and no new strikes. Being a player that plays not only PvE but also PvP, it is really annoying to get yet another expansion and still get no Crucible maps. Destiny is not just a PvE game, despite what most people say. What makes Destiny Destiny is the ability to go from a raid and earning weapons there and then taking those weapons into the Crucible to kill other players. Plus, I've said it once and I'll say it again, PvP is the only mode in Destiny that doesn't get old and stale because it is the only mode that is different every time you play it. And the complete lack of no new strikes is kind of getting pathetic at this point. I'm someone that doesn't mind doing strikes as I kind of view them as like a match-made dungeon with no real mechanics, and seeing how those strikes would behave in a GM setting was always fun for me. But the last strike Bungie made was Luminality from all the way back in the final shape. I don't know why Bungie just no longer wants to make strikes anymore, but they should really revisit that decision. And lastly, this isn't necessarily a thing Renegades brought, but more of a negative with the gameplay right now, and that being primary weapons essentially are just useless now. I mean, the meta is literally just abilities and special weapons, and if you try to do anything in the higher end range of activities and you try to use a primary weapon, exotic or legendary, you're actively throwing. Primary weapons need a major buff because there's really no reason to run them nowadays, and that just takes away a lot of the fun build crafting options. Destiny 2 Renegades is a good experience. The campaign is good, the new weapons are really great, Tharsis and its factions are a cool concept, and I really enjoyed the dungeon. But to answer the question that the title of this video posed, I just don't think this expansion fixes the core issues Edge of Fate brought. Once you're done with the campaign and you've gotten your fill of the dungeon and Lawless Frontiers, what is there to do? Well, it's right back to the portal. There's still no real reason to do any of the older dungeons or raids. There's still the core issues of armor archetypes, the power grind, no real challenge to attain tier 5s, and higher end PvP just feels lifeless and less of a fun challenging activity and more of a chore that allows everyone to get the best stuff without there being any skill requirement. But at the end of the day, what are you guys feeling about Renegades? Do you like it? Do you not like it? Do you think this did enough to fix a lot of the core issues Edge of Fate brought, or do you think Destiny was fine even before Renegades? Do let me know in the comments below. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Later.